Welcome to Propeller Breeze, the show for student pilots, sim fans, and everyone chasing that first solo and beyond. All information in this podcast is for entertainment and general knowledge only. Always verify with certified flight instructors or regulatory authorities before attempting anything mentioned here.
Imagine you are, let's say, 3,000 feet in the air.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And the weather is just starting to close in, the turbulence is kicking up, and you've got these passengers in the back seat who are completely depending on you to make a crucial meeting on time.
Yeah, that's a high-stress environment right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, your heart rate elevates just a little bit.
Yeah.
And in that exact moment, there is no, like, X-ray machine that can just scan your brain and tell you if you were about to make a fatal decision.
Oh, absolutely not. And that is the terrifying and frankly fascinating reality of the cockpit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when we talk about medical diagnoses or engineering problems, we expect precision, like a broken bone shows up as a jagged white line on a scan.
Right, it's very clear.
Exactly. Or a structural flaw in a bridge, well, it can be mathematically modeled. It's binary, right? Broken or not broken, safe or unsafe.
But then you step into the world of aviation. Specifically, you know, the psychology of human trauma and decision-making under pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, that X-ray machine is totally useless. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky.
It's all shades of gray.
Which is why today's deep dive is dedicated specifically to you, the listener. Because if you are a student pilot right now, working toward your private pilot license, learning how to execute a steep turn or a stall recovery probably feels pretty binary.
Yeah, you either maintain your altitude or you don't.
Right. But learning how to actually think in the air.
That is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, there is no single universal right answer when things get complex.
Which is frustrating for a lot of students.
Oh, for sure. But every single situation requires you to weigh your own unique experience, your personal minimums, and honestly, your physical and mental readiness on that specific day.
So our mission today is basically decoding the ultimate aviation survival tool. We are digging deep into aeronautical decision-making, or ADM, and Single Pilot Resource Management, SRM.
Two very heavy acronyms.
Yeah, but so important. And we've brought a massive stack of sources to the table today. We're talking official FAA flight training manuals, risk management handbooks, and some pretty intense NTSB safety analyses.
It's a lot of material.
It is. But we're going to extract the mental frameworks you need to make those murky judgment calls safely.
Because out in the real world, you know, away from that heavily controlled, sterilized environment of your early flight lesson.
Where the instructor's right there saving you.
Exactly. Judging a situation up there on your own is vastly more difficult than just moving the yoke and the rudder. The whole goal here is to equip you to systematically identify hazards and assess risks long before you are forced into a corner where you just have to react blindly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can react to a sudden emergency in the sky, we actually need a system to prevent it while we're still on the ground.
Right.
Or just during a routine cruise.
Right. The proactive stuff.
Yes, we have to start with the proactive approach. There's this foundational framework the sources outline called the 5 Ps: plan, plane, pilot, passengers, and programming.
And that fifth one, programming, is especially critical today. I mean, with all the glass cockpits and GPS automation we have now.
Oh, totally.
You really have to ask yourself, are you truly proficient with the avionics? Or are they just going to confuse you when you're heavily task-saturated?
Like when you're trying to figure out how to program a hold while bouncing around in turbulence.
Exactly. But the really crucial thing about the 5 Ps is that it isn't just a static list that you memorize for your check ride and recite once.
No. The entire framework relies on a scheduled review.
Yeah.
Like you are actively checking these 5 variables at very specific critical points in the flight.
Right. Pre-flight, pre-takeoff, hourly, or maybe at the midpoint of a flight, pre-descent, and just prior to the final approach fix or, you know, entering the traffic pattern.
It's kind of like taking a massive cross-country road trip, but with the stakes cranked up to 11.
No, I like that comparison.
Right, because you wouldn't just check your gas gauge in your driveway and then completely ignore the deteriorating blizzard outside, or your exhausted passengers, or the fact that your navigation system keeps freezing for the next 10 hours.
Right, you pull over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in flying, you can't just pull over to the shoulder of the clouds.
No, you can't. The environment is constantly changing, forcing you to make decisions. And usually an aviation accident isn't just one massive, sudden failure.
It's a chain.
Right. Exactly. It's a chain. It's a series of small, seemingly harmless decisions that compound into a critical outcome. So the scheduled nature of the 5Ps forces a sort of circuit breaker into your brain.
Stop the chain.
Right. It prevents you from being purely reactionary. For example, the absolute easiest point to cancel a flight due to bad weather is during that first check, the pre-flight, in the planning room.
Because you haven't even walked out the door to load the aircraft yet.
Yeah. You're still drinking a cup of coffee. The pressure is basically zero.
You just pack up and go home.
Precisely. You have all the information, and you can easily make alternate travel plans. But once the engine is running and you are actually in the air, the psychology of the pilot fundamentally changes.
Which is why that midpoint check is just so vital. I mean, if we look at the research in the manual, there is a very dangerous physiological shift that happens on longer flights.
What's fascinating here is what happens to the human body and mind at the midpoint of, say, a 3-hour flight.
Oh yeah, the fatigue.
Yeah, fatigue really starts to set in. The constant noise and vibration of the aircraft take a physical toll. You might even be experiencing subtle, low-altitude hypoxia, which slowly robs your brain of optimal oxygen without you even realizing it.
So insidious.
It really is. And this leads to a highly dangerous psychological transition. You actually shift from an active decision-making mode into a passive acceptance mode.
Wait, acceptance mode, is that just a fancy way of saying the pilot gets lazy?
No, it's not laziness at all. It's cognitive depletion.
Yeah.
Your brain is literally trying to conserve energy.
Oh, wow.
So instead of proactively formulating new plans as the weather slowly degrades, you just start accepting the deteriorating conditions. You become less discerning, less critical of the information coming in, and far more compliant with a bad situation.
That is terrifying.
And the terrifying part is that this usually happens just as the most critical portion of the flight approaches.
Like having to shoot a night instrument approach in the rain after flying for 3 solid hours, your mental guard drops exactly when you need it at its absolute highest.
Yes. And that's why the midpoint 5P check forces you to snap out of acceptance mode. It forces you to actively evaluate, okay, is the plan still solid? Is the pilot, meaning you, too fatigued?
Okay, I want to push back on one of those variables, though, the passenger's variable.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I'm flying the plane, I am the pilot in command. I make the rules. So why on earth are the passengers considered a primary risk factor? I mean, they're just sitting in the back reading a magazine, right?
It's a completely fair question, and it really highlights a massive difference between flying a multi-crew airliner with a locked cockpit door and flying a single-engine Cessna.
True, you can't exactly lock the door in a Cessna 172.
Exactly. In a small plane, you are within arm's reach of your passengers. It is a deeply personal, intimate relationship. The pressure they exert is rarely them shouting at you to fly into a thunderstorm.
Right, they don't know enough to shout about the weather.
No, it's much more insidious than that. The pressure is usually entirely internal. It's your own human desire to please them and not disrupt their plans.
Ah, the classic get-there-itis. You don't want to be the person who ruins the entire weekend.
The sources give a brilliant scenario of this, actually. Imagine you are flying a couple of key business partners to a crucial meeting at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C.
Okay, high stakes.
Right. And the weather is beautiful, visual flight rules, VFR, all the way to Southern Virginia. But then it turns to low instrument conditions near Dulles. The passenger pressure is intense, even if nobody is actively speaking.
You just feel it in the cabin.
You know they need to make that meeting.
So what do? Just turn around and tell my boss to shut up and let me fly? I mean, that doesn't seem like great crew resource management.
No, definitely not. But the SRM framework solves this by creating a psychological out. In this scenario, the solution is to land at a fuel stop in North Carolina or Virginia, well short of the bad weather, and rent a car for them.
Oh, wow. You give the passengers an alternate travel method.
Exactly.
That completely flips the script.
It really does, because the moment they have the keys to a rental car and are on their way to D.C. on the highway, the self-induced pressure on you to push through bad weather instantly vanishes.
Because you aren't ruining their meeting anymore.
Exactly. You manage the risk not by being a super pilot in the clouds, but by changing the passenger dynamic on the ground.
It's basically about outsmarting your own psychology. Though, I guess that requires some pretty factual, emotionless discussions with non-pilots.
Which is a skill in itself, by the way. Non-pilots do not understand aviation risk. To them, a cloud is just a cloud.
Right, it looks fluffy and harmless.
Yeah. So if you factually describe the risks of a night flight in poor visibility and offer the rental car, they will almost always take the car.
Okay, so the 5 Ps give us this great scheduled structure to catch these hazards. But the atmosphere does not wear a watch. What happens in the 59 minutes between those scheduled hourly checks? You can't just zone out.
Definitely not.
The pilot needs a continuous mental scan running in the background at all times, just like scanning the altimeter or the airspeed indicator.
Which brings us to the next framework in the sources, the 3P model: perceive, process, perform. And unlike the 5Ps, this one isn't scheduled. It is a continuous, never-ending loop.
Let's bring this out of the abstract with a case study for the manuals. So we have a pilot named Gail.
Okay.
Gail is a healthy, well-rested private pilot with about 300 hours of total flight time. She's flying a Cessna 182 to visit her family for the weekend.
A very standard scenario.
Right. The aircraft is in great mechanical shape. It has standard instruments, but no advanced weather avoidance gear. It's a summer day in the mid-Atlantic, hazy, hot, around 90 degrees, and humid.
Okay, I'm already seeing some red flags.
And she is flying over the mountains toward a destination airport that is currently reporting instrument meteorological conditions.
So she can't fly in visually right now.
Right, though it is forecast to clear up. And of course, her family is super excited and waiting for her.
See, this is a textbook setup for compounding risks. Nothing is violently failing yet, but the trap is being set.
Yeah.
Let's run Gail's situation through the 3P loop. The first step is perceive. To systematically perceive hazards, we use the PAVE checklist: pilot, aircraft, environment, and external pressures.
Okay, let me take a crack at this. For the pilot, she has 300 hours. Now, to a non-pilot, that sounds like a lot, but for mountainous cross-country flying, that's actually relatively inexperienced.
It really is.
Plus, the text notes, she hasn't flown at all in 2 months. So she's legally current, maybe, but she isn't proficient.
Spot on. Then we look at the aircraft. It's mechanically sound, but lacks weather radar. It's a capable plane, so the hazard there is, let's say, moderate.
Right.
Then, environment. This is a massive red flag. It's 90 degrees and humid, which creates a very high-density altitude.
Which means the air is thin.
Exactly. That drastically reduces the Cessna's climb performance over those mountains. Plus, hazy conditions make it incredibly easy to lose the horizon. And finally, external pressures. That excited family waiting for her at the destination.
Okay, so she has perceived the hazards. They are all laid out on the table. Now she has to process them. She has to figure out what they actually mean in reality.
And to process, the FAA gives us the CARE checklist: consequences, alternatives, reality, and external factors.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, she has to look at the reality. The reality is that hazy conditions over mountainous terrain for a rusty VFR pilot is a recipe for spatial disorientation. If she flies into a cloud, the consequence could be fatal.
But the external factor here, her pride, is probably whispering in her ear. She doesn't want to worry her mother with a late arrival, and she doesn't want to admit to herself that her skills might not be up to the challenge today.
Pride is incredibly powerful in the cockpit. The source text gives a fantastic rule of thumb for this processing phase, actually.
Oh, what is it?
If you are evaluating a situation and you catch yourself thinking that it will probably be okay, you are in desperate need of a reality check.
Oh, well.
Yeah, probably is the sound of your brain ignoring a risk because the alternative is inconvenient.
I love that. Probably is basically a gap in your logic that you're trying to bridge with hope.
Exactly.
So she perceives with PAE, she processes with CARE. The final step is perform, using the team checklist: transfer, eliminate, accept, mitigate. If I'm Gail, and I realize I'm in over my head, what do I actually do to perform? Do I just push the throttle and accept it?
Accepting a high risk is never the correct performance. She has to implement a risk control. She could mitigate the risk by hiring a certified flight instructor to fly with her, turning a risky solo flight into a really great dual instruction day.
That's a great idea.
Or she could alter her route to entirely avoid the mountains, mitigating the terrain risk. Or she could eliminate the risk entirely by simply postponing the trip until the visibility is perfect.
So it's perceive, process, perform, over and over until the wheels finally touch down. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We've done our scheduled 5P checks. We're running our continuous 3P mental scan. But what happens when the hazard isn't a slow-moving weather front?
Right.
What if a sudden, violent anomaly actually hits the aircraft?
Yeah.
The atmosphere suddenly throws a massive curveball or a piece of metal shears off. The adrenaline instantly dumps into your bloodstream. We have to transition instantly from assessing to reacting.
For the heat of the moment, the sources point us to the DECIDE model. Detect the problem, estimate the need to react, choose a course of action, identify solutions, do the necessary actions, and evaluate the effects.
But my question is about that adrenaline dump. When something sudden happens, the basic human instinct is to do something immediately. How do we avoid just panicking and overreacting?
This raises an important question because overreaction and fixation can actually be just as deadly as doing nothing.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The key is distinguishing between a hazard and a risk. The source uses a great example to illustrate this. Imagine you are flying along and the cabin door of a Mooney aircraft suddenly pops wide open in flight.
Oh, that would terrify me. I mean, the noise alone, the wind rushing in, papers flying everywhere, my instinct would definitely be to dive for the ground.
It's alarming, absolutely. The noise is deafening. But let's estimate the need to react. Let's look at context. If you are climbing through 1,500 feet on a clear, sunny VFR day, the hazard is an open door. But the risk? It's very low. The airplane doesn't care that the door is open. It will still fly perfectly fine aerodynamically.
It's just loud.
Right. You can just calmly enter the traffic pattern, return, land, and shut it properly. The problem is minor.
So the hazard is visually scary, but the actual risk to my life is low. But change the context.
Yeah.
What if not on a sunny day?
Right. What if that exact same door pops open during an IFR climb, inside a thick cloud, in intermittent turbulence and rain, right while you are trying to copy an amended clearance from air traffic control?
That's a nightmare scenario.
The hazard is identical, an open door, but the risk has skyrocketed. Why? Because your pilot workload is completely maxed out and the environment is entirely unforgiving. If you get distracted by the noise and stop scanning your instruments for even 10 seconds in a cloud, you could enter a fatal graveyard spiral.
Wow.
Your experience and awareness dictate how you rank a problem.
Context dictates the risk. And that leads us to one of the most intense cautionary tales in the entire stack of sources. It perfectly illustrates the danger of overreacting or acting without estimating and identifying first.
Ah, the Apache.
Yeah, the Piper-Apache-CH2 ride crash.
It's a tragic but incredibly vital learning tool for any student pilot.
Let me set the scene. We have a certificated private pilot taking a check ride, which is essentially a final exam for a commercial multi-engine rating.
So this is not a beginner.
Right.
Right.
And the guy evaluating him is a designated examiner. They're in a twin-engine Piper-Apache in Alabama. They're flying in the traffic pattern. The examiner decides to simulate a right engine failure.
A standard test mover.
To do this, he pulls the throttle on the right engine back to zero thrust. Instantly, because only the left engine is pulling, the aircraft yaws violently to the right.
Okay.
The pilot reacts immediately. He reaches up and feathers the left engine.
Let's clarify what that means for a second. To feather a propeller means you twist the blades so they are parallel to the wind.
So it stops catching the air.
Right, it stops the propeller from spinning and creating massive drag. You only do that to a dead engine.
Yes.
But the pilot feathered the left engine, the good engine, the only engine providing thrust.
Right. So now the right engine is at zero thrust because of the simulation, and the left engine is completely feathered and shut down.
Unbelievable.
He essentially turned a simulated single-engine emergency into a very real, very terrifying dual-engine glider scenario at low altitude.
And at that altitude, you don't have time to fix it.
No. The pilot realizes he can't make the runway. He tries to push the power back up on the left side, but because the left prop is feathered, it won't produce thrust. It just creates massive asymmetrical drag.
A nightmare.
The plane violently yaws left. The instructor desperately chops all the power to try and regain control, and they crash into the ground. Both survived, thankfully, but the plane was totally destroyed.
Now, as an analyst, the question isn't just what he did, but why he did it. Why on earth did a well-trained pilot feather the completely healthy engine?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm taking a test, I'm hyper-focused. How does a pilot make a mistake that catastrophic?
It really comes down to a dangerous combination of training bias and skipping the estimate and identify steps in that decide model we just talked about.
You just reacted.
Exactly. The procedure to identify a failed engine in a twin is a very specific, deliberate process. When an engine fails, the plane pulls to that side. You have to step on the opposite rudder pedal to keep the plane flying straight.
Okay.
The golden rule taught to every multi-engine student is dead foot, dead engine. Whichever foot is doing nothing, the dead foot corresponds to the side with the failed engine.
It's basically a built-in physical check.
Right.
But he skipped that step.
He completely bypassed the identification step. He just reacted.
Yeah.
And he reacted based on his training bias. Because in twin engine training, instructors heavily emphasize left engine failures.
Wait, so why the left specifically? Is it just like a tradition thing?
No, it's actually pure aerodynamics. It's this thing called P factor.
Right, P factor.
Yeah, multi-engine airplanes have descending propeller blades that produce greater thrust. On the right engine, that descending blade is further away from the center of gravity of the aircraft.
So it has more leverage.
Exactly. It has a longer moment arm. Think of pushing a heavy door open from the handle versus pushing it near the hinge. So if you lose the left engine, that right engine is pushing from much further out on the wing, creating much more severe asymmetrical thrust and adverse yaw.
That makes sense.
Because of that physics quirk, the left engine is usually considered the critical engine.
Ah, I see. So students practice left engine failures constantly because it's the hardest one to control physically. It requires the most muscle.
Exactly. His muscle memory was completely intensely biased toward a left engine failure. So when the examiner pulled the right engine and the adrenaline spiked, the pilot didn't detect, estimate, and identify properly.
He just did what he'd practiced 100 times before.
He acted without forethought. And the source text is incredibly explicit here. Taking action without forethought can be just as deadly as taking no action at all.
So what does this all mean for you, the student pilot listening right now? The takeaway is that decision-making isn't just a multiple-choice box you check on your written exam. It is a living, breathing, continuous loop of perceiving your environment, processing the reality, and performing mitigations.
It means you have to actively build up your mental muscles long before you need them.
On the ground.
Right. You do this by setting your personal minimums in advance. Sit down at your kitchen table when there is zero pressure to make a trip, and write down the crosswind components and visibility limits you will not fly in.
And write them in pen, not pencil.
Exactly. And you must pre-flight your passengers. Prepare them for delays and diversions so you never feel that silent internal pressure to push through bad weather.
And that brings us to a final, highly crucial piece of advice from the sources, something that almost always gets ignored by pilots at every level.
Oh, the post-flight.
Yes, the flight is not over when you shut down the engine, hop out, and tie down the wings. The most overlooked, underutilized tool in your entire flight bag is the post-flight analysis.
Because mistakes, sloppy flying, and judgment errors are inevitable. You are human. You will misjudge a wind gust. You will catch yourself thinking, probably.
We started this deep dive talking about medical x-rays, how we wish we had that kind of clear, binary picture of our decision-making in the cockpit. Well, while you're flying, that x-ray machine might be broken. The waters are murky.
Very murky.
But when you are safely back on the ground, tied down, and the engine is quiet, that is your darkroom. That is where you develop the picture.
But humans hate doing this.
You really do.
We suffer from survivorship bias. We think, well, I landed safely, so I must have made all the right decisions. But surviving a flight doesn't mean you flew it well. Your ego wants to gloss over the fact that you accepted way too much risk.
Because it hurts to admit you messed up.
It requires immense humility to sit in a quiet, parked airplane and admit to yourself that you just got lucky today.
So the provocative thought we want you to mull over before you ever take to the skies again is this. The next time you land safely, will you let your ego tell you that you're a great pilot? Or will you force yourself to objectively look at your own decisions, find the hidden fractures in your judgment, and fix them before you ever untie the plane again? Safe flying out there.
That's it for this episode. Keep your wings level, your brain sharp, and catch you next time in the pattern. Thanks for riding with Propeller Breeze.